88回の、東京大学医学教育セミナーを始めたいと思います。今日は、マラティ先生、マラティ・スリーバー先生の最後の、レクチャーになります。タイトルは、そこにあるように、アクティブラーニング・イン・スモール・グループ・メディカル・イン・メディカル・エデュケーション、コンプライアンス・リーメソッドです。日本語で失礼しますが、国際認証でアクティブラーニングというのは進められるというか必須のものとされていますが、日本の医学教育でアクティブラーニングって何でしょうか。アクティブラーニング、what is active learningです。3メソッドは、PBL、プログラムベースラーニング、それから PBL、Team Based Learning、CBL、Case Based Learning の3つです。で、なんでこの3つか、3つの違いが分かりますでしょうか。他に、other learning method?
Oh, there's many types of learning. Yes, but we're just doing 3 types today.
コンピューターベースドラーニングもあるし、ヒューマンベースドラーニングもあるし、スリープ。
That's my best kind of learning.
Anyway、今日はこの3つですね。PBL、TBL、CBL。これを比較して、究極の目的は、What is active learning です。What is active learning ということで、thank you very much for your last lecture.
I know, I can't believe I've been here now.
We're all expecting.
Well, minimize your expectations, but I think we're going to have a really great time today. And Kitamura-sensei, thank you so much for that introduction. So today, we're going to be talking about active learning, but you all together are going to be active learners. So we're going to put you into small groups as people come in, and we're going to have you start working together on some projects. There's going to be 3 different cases, 3 different methods that we'll show. And I think that you'll like this. I think it's going to be pretty fun. So again, thank you to everyone for your wonderful help and thoughts. I've learned so much from all of you. Thanks especially, I want to mention both Liz Armstrong and Paul Haydet, who are sort of new to this slide, for their contributions to this work. And we're going to talk about 4 things today. The first is what is active learning, and kind of thinking about how we learn and what we know about the science of learning. We're going to go very quickly then into problem-based learning. How many people are familiar with this idea of problem-based learning? Okay, I'm going to challenge how you think about problem-based learning, because I think that the way we think about it, the way I think about it, and the way sort of it's done internationally are a little bit different. The third is we're going to talk about case-based learning and kind of do a demonstration. One of our residents will come in. And then the last will be having you guys work together on a team-based learning exercise, which will be pretty fun. And I think that should illustrate 3 different ways of approaching teaching and learning. And again, there's so many others. So here's the data, okay? So when you teach others, you remember 90% of what you teach. But if you're just sitting there in a lecture, or if you're just reading something, it's only 10%. So the more interactive you make the participation for the learner, the more they're going to remember. And again, we talked about this already, right? So the challenge is hard, but it's just hard enough. It's not too hard for you. And this is kind of what we want to avoid, right? Isn't this what happens a lot of time when we are together in lecture? Right? People are falling asleep all the time. I've gone to at least 6 Todai lectures with wonderful educators. Over 50% of the class was sleeping at some point in time, and 20% were sleeping through the entire lecture, okay? And so this is also in lots of committees. This is our current vice president in the upper right corner in the US. But this is what active learning looks like, engaged learning, where people are actually involved and they're doing stuff. And you can have them do all kinds of stuff, from exercises to, we can talk about that later. So this is probably not going to play, so I'll skip this for now. But what I want to show you is that, you know, people, no matter what age you are, it doesn't matter if you're a kid or if you're a teenager or a medical student or a faculty member or a member of the community, we know that everyone wants to be engaged. And the way younger people learn is different than the way people who are of an older generation learn. Because of the emphasis and their familiarity with technology, they really want to participate using multimodal means of learning. And this is data from the AAMC, which is the American Association of Medical Colleges, and we know that fewer than 40% of students ever attend class in the US. And 90% are studying on the internet, including using non-curated sources, things like just doing a random Google search and just reading whatever comes up. So, you know, we have to teach people not only to be able to evaluate evidence, but if you want them to come to class, you've got to give them a good reason to be there, okay? And it can't just be to hear us be amazingly smart about something. Because it's not about, it's very important. The idea is that there's three different concepts. One is education, one is teaching, and the third is learning, okay? So if you talk about education we think of as a system of imparting knowledge, okay? It's the entire curriculum. That's an educational system. Teaching is what we do to set up an environment where people can learn. And it might be, it's usually the educator, us, we're the ones who are creating that learning environment, but we're creating the environment within a system of education. And you can create that environment in lots of different ways. And learning is what happens to the individual, where you guys have, you know, the clarinet and learning a foreign language and learning soba noodles. That's what the individual is doing, the person who's learning, or we call the learner, right? So these are important concepts because we often get teaching and learning confused. We think that if we're good teachers, if we're smart, and we're providing good content, and we have to really think about it from the flip side, which is, what is the individual who's there in front of us, what do they need from us? Does that make sense? Okay? So, in that way, we have things having to do with performance levels. And so, there were two brothers, Dreyfus and Dreyfus, okay, who were commissioned by the US Air Force to be able to figure out how to make fighter pilots better, because there were some accidents in the US. And they came up with a system where they said people start off as being beginners. They start off as novices. Then they get to be a little bit more advanced, an advanced beginner. And for medicine, we consider this a medical student. Okay? They get to be competent, where they can practice independently. That's usually for us in the US at the end of residency. Then people get proficient and expert, and some people over time, this is an added category called mastership. Okay? So people get better and better over time, and it usually for each level to kind of reach another threshold takes about 10,000 hours of practice, okay, per level. That's the general thought. And believe it or not, over 100 years ago, there was a Russian sociologist, Vygotsky, who developed this idea called the zone of proximal development. And he said that, you know, if you take someone's competence, which is how good they are, and then you compare it to the level of challenge of the activity, you have this idea, this ideal portion of the middle where people learn the best, okay? And this is kind of, so when you want to get them to be more competent, to move over to this side of the competence level, you can't make the challenge too easy. Because if the challenge is too easy, so the challenge level is here, but then their competence is actually already past that point, they're going to be really, really bored, okay? And we've seen lots of circumstances where we have done a great job of boring our students because the stuff hasn't been challenging enough. Alternatively, so this is what they can achieve independently now. And in this middle zone, they can kind of, with the right challenge, if you provide something that he called scaffolding. Okay, scaffolding is you provide them support and tools and information and feedback. You can actually get this entire zone to move over. So they can achieve this with some assistance. But if you make the task too hard, so the challenge level is too high, okay, what happens instead to the learner is not that they're bored, but they get really, really frustrated. And frustration was to show up in red and didn't. So this kind of brings us to the idea of we have to kind of rethink a little bit about how we teach. Okay, so how we impart learning to others. It can't just be about us talking, because that's an inefficient way of helping people learn something in a way that they can apply it and use it in the future, right? So there's strategies that we can use for large groups, for small groups, for independent learning. And these are just a few of the strategies for small groups. We're going to talk about the first three, but then we've got things with clinical reasoning exercises, laboratories and experiments, lots of online web collaboration. Onishi-sensei even demonstrated sort of the value of a small group learning community just now with the Soba Noodle story. But these are the kind of things that we can do, okay? So these are very distinct, and so there's lots of different formats, and I'm sure that at Todai and at other universities, people will create their own. But from a historical perspective, problem-based, this is very ironic because we're just actually writing a book chapter for Ron Hardin's current medical education book on kind of on problem-based learning and a comparison with other methods. So I just finished the chapter last weekend. But the problem-based learning idea came up in the 1970s or 80s at McMaster's University when Canada and the US were expanding their number of medical schools. And people were really experimenting. They were saying, we know lots about constructivist strategies from Piaget and Dewey and all these other people about how people learn. Why don't we try to apply some of those concepts? So they came up with this idea of problem-based learning, and we're going to do a problem-based learning exercise. So I want everyone to kind of get together in groups, okay? And this isn't quite shown up properly, but that's okay. Let's have groups get together. I'm going to have 5 people to a group. So I'm going to have you 5 together over here. And we're going to have, maybe we're going to have you 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 together over here. And we're going to have you 5 working together on this side. Okay, so everybody come together. These are going to be your groups for the day. Okay, and I see you have a computer, which is great. Okay. Seriously, get together. Okay? So your group, this is your group challenge. There's a new art exhibit at the Modern Art Museum. And an anonymous caller has just called the museum hotline. And they've said this: one of the paintings has been replaced by the Order of the Purple Slipper. And we think they've placed a fake piece in the collection, but we're not sure. Okay? So you are all consulting detectives. You are art detectives today. Okay? I don't care if you know anything about art, but today you're going to be each of the groups is an art detective. Okay? And your job is to be able to figure out, because it's almost midnight now, okay? And the exhibit's opening at 8 a.m. tomorrow. They need to know whether or not to remove a certain piece of art. And this is the piece of art that they think may be a fake. And so you have to figure out, I'm going to give you about 10, 15, maybe 15 minutes to work together as a group. And in those 15 minutes, I want you to figure out whether or not you think this piece of art is real or fake, and then provide your evidence to the rest of us. All right? 15 minutes, the clock starts now. I'll have the groups come together. Okay. So let's start off with this group over here. Is the painting real or fake? And should we pull it from the collection?
We have several options. He mentioned he could Google.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, first he should take a picture.
Oh, no. First I want your conclusion. What are we going to do? Are we pulling the painting? And then you can justify it. But I want to know what you want to do.
Well, we said that actually it probably wouldn't matter if it was real or fake because people may not know. So
all right. And so you were saying that the process that you went through is.
Yeah. Actually, the priority is put it on that what he said.
Okay.
Yeah. And the second opinion is Googling.
Okay.
Googling, because we can get information immediately. Maybe you can find a signature on the lower right corner of the painting. So it says Picasso.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to find the same painting information on the internet by putting his name.
Okay.
But there are thousands of paintings
Absolutely,
from our
he was a
group,
very
so we
prolific.
gave up such an idea. So finally, eventually, we made conclusion to ask a appraiser, a reliable appraiser, to check that painting is genuine one or not.
Very nice, good
Yeah.
job. All right.
We are in Tokyo, so there are, I guess, maybe there is one or two reliable appraiser.
Great, well, what a creative solution. So big hand for group one. And group two, what do we do with the painting? You are our art detectives.
We basically came up with pretty much the same things, but if we can add one more, we would look at the actual signature of
Okay.
Picasso and compare it to other signatures, the real ones that Picasso actually wrote.
Ah, okay.
And if it's the exact same signature, then it must be real. But if it's a little bit different, then it might be fake.
Sure, and I heard some discussion about the nature of the painting and things along those lines, some things that you were using as your clues. Do you want to share that with the group?
I just checked by Google.
Yeah.
I put in the two keywords, Picasso and Cubism.
Oh.
This is because this is obviously Cubism painting, but describing some town.
Mhm. Yes. Mhm. I'm listening. We got
And,
a guest coming in a few minutes. Mhm.
Picasso actually painted similar well, building and landscape in the Cubism fashion. But I don't think this is by Picasso. I think it's a fake.
You think it's a fake? Okay, so we've got a definitive moving towards a fake here. I like that. So does the group agree?
We thought maybe it would necessary to check the certificate, or how can you say, like a proof, the document or proof the.
Oh, the provenance. Okay, going through the history of the painting. I like it. Or whatever documents we have, although that might be fake too. This is a fake painting. Okay, great, good. And how about, so big hand for group two. But still waiting on some more data, and Dr. Google was a great consultant. Great. How about this group?
I think we've looked at it from a different point of view,
Okay.
but subjective impressions, no, but we're not appraisers. Right?
Okay. No, you're art detectives, and so you have to come up with a conclusion. You've been called in the middle of the night. It's an art consultant, it's an art emergency.
Well, I don't understand that situation, and museum security is not really the issue. If this had been stolen, then you would call museum security, right? But since it's already there, we want to know whether it's a fake or not a fake, right?
Right.
Yeah. And if we found another painting that was exactly the same, owned by somebody else in a different place, we would know that either that or this is a fake.
Okay.
True? And if we knew that there was a painting similar to this that was also signed by Picasso, we could compare the two, but we can't do that overnight, and we can't do it immediately. And calling on appraisers sounds like a very good idea. But even appraisers are not 100% certain.
Okay.
And they have different opinions. The provenance of artwork is extremely important. That could be fake, as you say.
Could be faked. I mean, if the painting's fake, provenance can be fake too.
Yeah, but that would be easier to trace than.
Okay.
And other ideas were to X-ray it, and if we found, something behind it that
Yeah.
was fishy,
Wonderful.
there are lots of other.
Okay, so fake or not fake, pull it from the collection or not. exhibits opening in the morning. What's your decision?
My decision, based only on subjective impressions, is this is not a Picasso.
Okay. Does the group agree? Yes? Okay, all right, so big hand for wonderful, you guys made excellent art detectives, and you used multiple sources. You used each other and each other's expertise. You're gonna call on others, get x-rays. Didn't hear any video footage to make sure to see if anyone had switched it out in the middle of the night, an interloper. But lots of good data acquisition, and the groups really were working well together, right? So, so nice job. So if this is real or fake, you know, that's a challenge. And this is actually, you all were pretty right. This is a big fake, okay? This is actually a very famous fake also. So Pablo Picasso, as you know, was one of the greatest 20th century artists. And he was
the greatest.
The greatest. He was the founder of the modernist movement. And he was alive even in the 70s. And he was painting actively until his death. These are some of his better known works from 1907. This is my favorite one. It's hanging in my hometown in Chicago at the Art Institute. And this is probably his most famous painting, which is about war. It's in the city of Guernica in the Basque region of Italy. It's a very sad painting, but also very hopeful and has some great elements, which we can talk a little bit about later if you guys are interested. But here's the painter, John Mayet. So John Mayet started off as a school teacher, and after he got divorced and had to support his kids, he had a lot of problems financially, and he was a wonderful painter. So he initially started off painting landscapes and other things and selling them commercially and at art fairs. But then he met someone who was a little bit more nefarious, who convinced him to start creating forgeries. So he created hundreds and we think thousands of forgeries and sold them as real paintings. And he ended up kind of serving his time in prison after turning in some of the bigger fish. And he's the biggest art fraud in the 21st century. And many of his paintings are still out there. But he's now become infamous, and there's a movie being made about him, and he now does famous portraits of celebrities and other people in the style of, say, Renoir, or in the style of Picasso. So that was actually one of his pieces of work. Okay, so is this painting real or forged? We talked about how the groups assess the cases. And this is an example of problem-based learning. Okay? So in problem-based learning, the way you're probably used to seeing it done is that not only has someone set up a great scenario and given you a good challenge, but usually in a lot of problem-based learning classes, the faculty is actually providing a lot more guidance. And every time someone asks me a question, what did I do? I didn't answer it. I just sort of said, oh, that's a really great job, cubism, what a good observation, or that's a really great question, maybe you should investigate it further. So the job of the facilitator in problem-based learning is to keep the group on task and not provide any content, although I might know a lot about this piece, okay, or about the challenge itself. So the way McMaster's University had thought about this was that if there was a technical problem, like the projection on this computer is not that great, so you can't really read the signature, or if someone's really off track or confused, those are things that you provide input on. But the facilitator actually just holds back and keeps the groups on task. Okay? And how did it feel? Was it fun to kind of think about this, right? You don't have to know anything about art, but it's kind of fun to do and people get engaged with it, right? Okay. So in PBL, there's actually a very standardized format that McMaster's came up with. You assemble a group, about 10 to 15 people. Everyone gets assigned a role, and in this we didn't assign roles, right? We just sort of let you do your thing. There's a scribe, there's a leader or a moderator. Everyone else is considered a participant, and the roles rotate so that no one gets to be the group leader or moderator every single time. Okay? And that way you can make sure the role of the moderator is not to lead the group to victory, but rather to make sure everybody's participating. So no one person dominates the group, okay? And everyone's input is assigned. Then everyone shares what they know. Then, this is very important, the group self-assigns learning objectives to each person. Says, you go research this, you go research that, we don't know this, we don't know that. Everyone does independent research, usually in the group, in the session. And then you come back and you solve the problem. And oftentimes people are asked to present not just sort of your fact-finding and your processes, and your supporting data, but also like what's the conclusion, what do you want to do, right? And so in the process everyone learns, and then you can share in this kind of format, and it's really quite fun, okay? So if it's done well, it's lively and terrific, and people have a good time. The role of the educator is called a tutor in this particular setting, and we talked a little bit about this. Okay, so really the purpose of the faculty is to make sure that you're encouraging self-directed learning. Okay? So this has some real advantages, and it has some real disadvantages. The major advantage is that it simulates real life, right? So if you're in a clinical setting and a patient comes in, you're going to really draw upon your small group and get them to start thinking with you about what can be happening with the patient, assessing data as it comes in. More and more data comes in, you change your hypothesis. But then the disadvantage is that this, first of all, doesn't use the faculty's expertise. It's highly time inefficient because you've got to do all the background work. I didn't provide you 5 high-quality articles on Cubism and Picasso, 20th century art, and give you a framework for approach, right? Instead, I made you do all the information seeking on your own. And that can be really, really fun. At the same time, it can be really, really frustrating, okay? So if you do a whole curriculum like this, students are going to pull their hair out because they're going to hate it, okay? For the most part, they don't like, but to do this in some places is just terrific. So when you're thinking about any kind of educational strategy, going back to the active learning talk, or thought about it, don't think about using only one method. Think about this like anything else that we do. We have multiple options for approach. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, you're going to use a different method, okay? Does that make sense? So I know there's many people who feel very strongly about each of these different kinds of approaches. I'm hoping that our discussion today will broaden that so that you feel comfortable with lots of different approaches. Okay. All right. So now we have our wonderful Sayori Sensei who's going to come and help us today. She's one of our fabulous medicine residents and is going to play the role of a patient today. So did you want to introduce yourself? And she's in the middle of her rotation, so she's taking a lot of time off, and I appreciate it. Okay.
I'm a PGI1 student, and I'm now working to medical emergency department, and I'll take care of a lot of patients there. I met Dr. Srinivasan when I made a presentation at the conference of ICU, and yeah, we had a lot of.
We had a great time together, and she was wonderful. She did a great job on a really challenging clinical diagnostic case, and even came up with a new paradigm for thinking about urgency and severity in terms of how quickly we have to act. So hopefully we'll be publishing that soon.
Thank you.
Great. So she's going to be Emma Kobayashi. Okay, so case-based learning is a little different. Case-based learning is more faculty dependent in terms of the faculty does a lot more to set up the case and participates a lot more during the case. So I'm going to role play a student who's interviewing a patient, a standardized patient who's come in as part of our learning session. And this is what I know about Emma. So Emma, you can take a seat. So Ms. Kobayashi-san is 24 years old. She's not feeling that well. Her vital signs are pretty normal, and that's all I know about her so far. Okay? She hasn't told the nurse very much, and the way this would happen in one of our courses that we call doctoring, which is in our university, our method of case-based learning, is you can use for case-based learning video vignettes, standardized patients, real patients, paper cases, anything really for the case, but it tends to be a little bit more structured. And we're going to do something called a timeout, which is where the actress, going from being the actress or the patient, she'll just fall asleep. And then when I call timeout and when I call time in, she'll wake up. Okay, so we can have a discussion about what's happening. And normally there'd be about 6 to 10 students, and we have 2 faculty usually in each of the sessions. one who's a physician and one who's a non-physician, could be a social worker or a behavioral scientist, a psychologist, someone in like ethicist or a lawyer, and then they co-teach the class together. All right. So I'm now the student doctor. Hello, hi, I'm Malfi. I'm the medical student here today to interview you. How are you, Kobayashi-san?
I'm just concerned about my health, so I came here. I haven't been feeling well.
Oh no, I'm so sorry about that. That's terrible. When you say you're not feeling well, can you tell me more about?
Well, I live in Canada and I just came back.
In Canada? Oh wow.
Wow. I couldn't concentrate anything there.
Oh, what were you doing in Canada?
I was a graduate student.
Oh wow, that's a very hard place to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I see. And you said you were having a hard time concentrating? So you've been feeling unwell for a little while now? It hasn't just been, it sounds like a couple months, is that right, or longer?
Maybe 4 months.
4 months? Okay. 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 Let me take a time out. Okay. So guys, I need your help. Where do I go from here? I'm asking her some questions and she's not giving me very much information. Yeah.
It could be psychological. Why don't you ask her about her background and friendships and things
Okay.
like that.
That sounds great. Any other suggestions for me at this point?
I agree that she has mental problems, so I want to ask her, for example, sleep disturbance,
Okay.
lots of updates,
Oh.
relevant to the psychological symptoms.
Okay, great, great. Any other suggestions before I call a time in? Because I feel like I'm stuck. You know, I'm just a third-year student, and so I'm not really good at this yet. Okay. Well, those are 2 good suggestions, so time in. So, Kobayashi-san, I'm really glad you came in today. So, you know, I know it sounds like you were pretty stressed, or something was wrong in Canada, and you were feeling unwell.
Right.
Have you lost any weight, or have you had any fevers?
Yeah,
or-
actually, my weight is getting
Okay.
yeah.
I see. You've had some weight loss?
Yeah.
Are you having any night sweats or fevers or anything?
I have fever now.
You feel like you've got a fever now? Okay. Okay. And anything else, sore throat or headaches or nausea, vomiting or anything?
Actually, no, but I'm just concerned about my rashes.
You've had rashes too?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any right now, but when we do the physical examination, I think that they're okay, at least from what I can see. Can you tell me about your friendships and other things? Are they going okay?
Well,
Like, have you had trouble, so time out. How do I ask her this question? I'm kind of having trouble figuring out where to go from here. I'd like to get to the friendship portion and all the rest of it, but I've asked her this question and it seems really awkward. And she doesn't seem like she's disclosing very much to me.
Well, shouldn't you ask obvious questions like, are you single or married? Do you live alone?
Okay.
How you ask those questions is a different matter.
Sure, okay.
You kind of introduce the topic, so say, I want to ask you some questions now about your social situation or who you live with, can you tell me about your family or...
Okay. Do you think I need to make any statements about confidentiality or anything else along those lines? Do you think that might help? Okay. Time in. So, Kobayashi-san, I'm really glad you came in today. And I know you've sort of told me a little bit about what's going on with fevers and things and rashes for the past 4 months. You don't seem like, you seem pretty sad to me. And I just want to let you know that whatever you share, with me is really between you and me, unless it affects public health. And the questions that I'm asking you are really so that I can understand how your life and lifestyle affect your health. And I ask these things of all of my patients.
You want to tell my parents?
I absolutely will not tell your parents. You're 24 years old and you're an adult, and so there's so whatever we say is just between us.
Okay. So, basically, I was born here in
Tokyo, yeah.
and grew up here, and I graduated from University of Tokyo.
Ah, it's a great university, I hear.
Thank you. But, I had a boyfriend there, and we got very good relationship. But after graduation, we broke up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And after I got accepted from Toronto.
In Toronto, oh,
in
yeah.
Canada,
So
so,
we even met.
oh, sorry.
Then I got a full scholarship, so I went to Canada, and I became a graduate school there,
Oh,
research
great.
student there.
Toronto, what was your major?
Business
Okay.
and marketing, and I enjoyed my life there, and I met a boy at our campus library. And he was really a nice guy. He was a Canadian boy, and we fall in love with each other. And yeah, we had really a great time. But 4 months ago, I didn't feel very well, and I had a flu, so I went to student health, and they tested a lot of, but then finally they found that I had a HIV,
Oh,
so, and now I'm depressed.
wow, that sounds like a very, oh, hold on 1 second. So guys, what do I do? She just told me she has HIV. I'm kind of stuck. It's kind of an overwhelming thing for patients, and it's kind of a little overwhelming for me too. You know, I've never taken care of anyone with HIV before, and I don't know what to do. Can you help me?
If you feel too overwhelmed, maybe you should consider the consultation to the physician.
Should I do that now, do you think? Because she just told me this really terrible thing. I mean, I'll certainly, so I think that a referral to a specialist is a great idea. But we're in the middle of the interview right now. Anything from a communication standpoint or ways to acknowledge it with her?
I would appreciate her honest and her disclose.
Oh, okay.
Disclose it to the facts she
Yeah.
concealed behind here.
It's great. Okay, very good. Then you have a
And
suggestion?
I would ask her how she's feeling about it.
Okay.
That's one, and also what she wants from this meeting, why she came to the thing.
Okay. Any other suggestions? Yes?
Well, I don't know what the laws are in Canada, here in Japan, but there are probably differences. And a serious disease like HIV is presumably reportable. So I think you have to explain to the patient the connection between your promise to keep it confidential,
Yeah.
and then what you have to do and what she has to do.
Okay.
Now that's not maybe the next thing you want to say, but it's
But that's something certainly to keep in mind, just the same way the referral to the specialist is. We'll need to get some input. That sounds great. Okay, I think that's giving me enough to go on right now. I'm in. So, you know, I have to say that I'm really glad that you shared that with me. I know that must have been a tough thing to share.
Thank you.
Have you told anybody else so far?
No.
Oh gosh, you've been living this by yourself for 4 months?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I live with my parents, but I never told them.
You didn't tell them, so even after you, is that the reason that you left Canada?
Yeah, actually.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry.
Mm. Yeah, okay.
How are you feeling?
A little bit better, but not very well.
Not very well.
No.
It sounds like it's been pretty overwhelming.
Right.
I'm gonna call a timeout. Yes.
Well, before going straight, first, I would ask her what kind of test she received when she was told HIV
okay.
positive. Or it's a immunoassay or Western blot.
Okay.
That's because there was some, I don't know the number, but false positive
Okay.
is 2-3% false positive. There is false positive.
Okay.
But so I would like to make it sure.
So maybe I'll ask her if she's sure she has HIV and if she has the test results, because she's a business student, she may not know that for sure. Great. So Canyon. So again, I'm really glad that you've shared this with me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have your test results with you, or are you sure that the doctors were correct?
Yeah, I'm sure, but I don't know what the test is going on, and
Sure.
because I'm not a medical student, so.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. So I'm going to end the encounter from this perspective right here and give you a big hand. So as a patient, what was that like for you, the standardized patient? What did that feel like?
Yeah, they're very depressed.
I think she did a wonderful job playing a depressed graduate student who's now, and we haven't even gotten to a lot of the other issues. Like, we know for sure she doesn't want to talk to her parents, but were there other things on your mind as well? Other concerns that you've had?
Well, I'm just curious about her future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can she have a baby or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're not really sure. So.
Yeah, so those are all important things, right? So one of the things, so did you notice like people were pretty engaged with this, right? Did you like this format? Okay. So one of the things in case-based learning that you can do is you can start and stop encounters. And usually people in the group in each of the groups are pre-assigned reading. So not only would I have stopped and said, I'm stuck, like I help you guys, I don't know what I'm doing, but then people would chime in. Someone would have read an article about confidentiality or about false positive rates or accurate assessment or depression and HIV. And so whoever was reading it would have become a content expert, to some degree in that, and they contribute that to the group. So everyone's not reading everything, right? So maybe there's one base article that everyone's read, but then there's a lot of other things that individual people have been assigned. And unlike problem-based learning, where everyone's discovering the information in real time, here you're kind of coming prepared, and the group time becomes a little different. So you can do more of these kind of interactions if you decide to use a standardized patient. You don't need to use a standardized patient. You can use a video vignette and still have the discussion. But the key is the sequential disclosure of information over time. And everyone becomes an active participant. Okay? And you can evaluate whether or not someone's done their work. Because the faculty knows when that topic comes up, because it'll come up at some point, whether or not they're contributing. If they've read the articles and they've thought about it and they put it in context, then you can say that person did a good job in contributing. And you want to make sure one person's not dominating and one person's not speaking at all. Right? So this is an example of case-based learning. Was this kind of useful to, yes? All right, big hand again.
Thank you very much.
And I think we finished on time, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
So
good.
I'm going back to
Yeah,
my work.
thank you so
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you again, I really appreciate it. not only kind of solve a problem, because if you can make this, it doesn't have to be a ramification case, it can be an experiment, it can be anything that you want. The case just has to have usually multiple parts. People come together and start problem solving. But it's also a place where you can safely practice skills. And that's kind of one of the nice things, and you can go into behaviors and psychosocial illness and the interaction between behavioral medicine and clinical medicine and getting to data and evidence. You could have given people an article to read ahead of time that has a lot of data and have people work on synthesizing it. You can break out and have people write on the board about things. So it's a very flexible format, just like problem-based learning is very flexible. This is also very flexible. Okay. And the participants here have individual assignments we talked about. They work together. You can start and stop a discussion. And then you can either solve a problem or you can develop a framework. Okay. And the educator has a more active role. So unlike problem-based learning, where the faculty is really holding back and trying to get the group to stimulate the self-start and really learn, the faculty here moderates and also helps provide a little bit more guidance. And if someone asks a question, well, I'm not really sure how to interpret this, or I'm not sure really what that meant. In problem-based learning, the faculty would say, well, what do you think? Go figure that out. And they'd never give you an answer. Here, the faculty would still say, what do you think? Tell me more about that. What does the group think? How would you approach this? What are the pros and cons? But they'll share their opinion also. So in case-based learning, the faculty share. And they share as a discussant and a participant. They're not dominating the group. And so when you're listening to a good case-based discussion, the faculty should probably be speaking about 10 to 20% max, like both faculty together in our sessions. And if they're talking too much, they're doing something wrong. Because the student should have come in adequately prepared. And if the faculty has to contribute more than that, then the students need to be better prepared for the session. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so I don't know why this is showing up twice, but it is. So I can go into, we do a whole big thing on, so we do a whole thing on a whole 2 or 3 day session on how to create some of these cases and how to write complex vignettes with the faculty guides and everything else, from competency development all the way to training standardized patients. Just know you guys have a very, at Todai and at most of the universities in Japan, they have very active standardized patient programs. So when you're doing this, please collaborate very actively, and it makes the thing much more fun. So our final format that we're going to demonstrate today is something called team-based learning. Are you guys familiar with team-based learning? No? Okay. So again, this is one of many small group learning formats. It's just very much used in North America. And I'm going to, this is a special thanks to Paul Hayden. He let me borrow a bunch of his slides. And also, I'm using his quiz today. So special thanks to Paul. We were at a baseball game in Boston a couple years ago. And he did a nice talk, and he was kind enough to let me use the stuff. I revised the slides, of course, but much of the base content is his. So we're going to, so the way this goes is that in problem-based, team-based learning. So in team-based learning, there's 3 stages of team-based learning. Okay? People prepare individually ahead of time and come to class and take a quiz. Then the groups, and I see that you've come a little late, so would you like to join this group over here? So then the people take a quiz individually, and then the group then takes the quiz together. And then people will debate the answers, and each of the groups, so we're all going to be working together, so get closer, get closer. So then the group will debate the answers, all the groups together using the whiteboard, and you will then argue for points. And the final stage of team-based learning is the creation of a group project. Okay? Now, it's a little confusing when you first started, because the scoring system is not as straightforward as just pick the single best answer. Okay? So, and the questions are usually pretty fun. It's a really fun format. People love this format. Okay? joined an international international technology company as chief marketing officer. And right now, their marketing in every country is very, very different. And you want to standardize multinational advertising, but the CEO says, listen, leave well enough alone. I know you've come on as this new chief marketing officer, but you know, we have limited budget and resources. And you want to convince the CEO. So you're going to present research that shows that the primary reason to standardize is one of the following. Okay? It's either A, take advantage of product use demographics. B, take advantage of cultural similarities across regions or countries. C, capitalize on the fact that the product was standardized. D, create a single brand image across markets. Or E, reduce marketing costs, thereby increasing profits. Okay? So what does the research show is the primary reason to standardize multinational advertising? Okay? So we can talk about this as a group. So we're going to pick A, B, C, or D. And so what I want to show you is this. Okay? So it's not going to be the standard A, B, C, or D. We're going to pass this out. So you're actually going to have a form that'll look like this, and I'm going to have everyone take one and pass one down. And every question has every question can be, there's 5 answers, and so you can have 5 answers, give 5 points given to A. So every question is worth 5 points. Okay? So you can give 5 points to A. You can give, you can split the points. You can give 5 points to, 3 points to B and 2 points to C. You can split the points in any way that you want to once you're in your groups. Okay? So does that make sense to you? A question is worth 5 points, and when the group comes together or individually, depending on your level of confidence, you can either give all 5 points to one answer or you can split it. So let's kind of take a look at that question again. There we go. Okay, so what do you guys think the correct answer is for this? A, B, C, or D? Well, why don't we have each of the groups talk about it for a minute, and then come up with your answer and how you're going to split it. Is this in the way? Should I move this? So, and everyone has to contribute, so everyone sort of think together and... Okay, all right. So you've had a minute to think about it. So what's the answer? And how confident are you? How about this group over here? What do you guys think? Is it A, B, C, or D, or E? Huh? 5 points to D. Ah, I love it. Okay, great. How about this group? So how many? 5 points for E. I like it. Everyone's all or nothing here. How about here? What's your decision? Huh? E? Not E? E? How many points is there a split? Are you guys going to split one way or the other? Or you're going to put all your money on one answer? What do you think? No, the group is supposed to decide. The group decides together.
I think we should give one to each of them.
One to each? Okay. All right. That's a strategy. That's a strategy. Okay. All right. And so why did you choose D? Why did you choose E? Why did you choose one for each? So let's start here. What's your rationale for D?
This company is technology company.
Yeah.
So I imaged the old Sony or Panasonic. The single brand is very strong power.
Ah, okay. So yeah.
The reason is this company is technology.
Ah, okay. Okay. So because it's a technology company, a single brand identity seems like you've seen examples of this before in terms of what large multinationals have done. Okay. How about E?
So in general, CEO is interested in the cost.
Yes, very interested
Maybe
in
the
profit.
priority for him, so
Okay,
E is the most appropriate.
okay, great. Okay, that's a good, so you think that because of the CEO's viewpoint, this will reduce marketing costs. Okay, great.
We were very cool toward all of them.
You didn't like any of them?
Yeah, well, should we critique each of the,
No, I just wanted, I need a justification for why you decided what you decided. And what your thought process is of the sort of the major points.
there's only one that talks about profits. Presumably that's a motive that would appeal to a CEO, that's E.
Okay, okay.
But to critique the consensus view on D, how can you prove that a single brand image would have equal effects in different countries and regions?
Okay.
That would be a reason for the CEO to resist this.
Okay, so the answer is D. Oh, big pat on the back. Okay, so the reason, so just like Apple or Sony or Panasonic, they have a single icon, a single tagline, a single image. This helps unify their platform as people travel. So you don't say, Apple means one thing in one country and another thing in another. It helps them, it does not necessarily reduce marketing costs because you've got to translate it appropriately into languages and do other kinds of things. And you do save because you don't have to customize some of the stuff per region in terms of coming up with something new for every country. But at the same time, if it's not done well, you do reduce marketing costs, but the key is not to reduce the marketing costs. The key is to increase sales and to increase profit margin per unit. So the profit analysis is incomplete for E, which is why that's wrong. But this is sort of, the research shows that a single brand identity is the most useful for, okay? So you guys get the format. I just wanted to do that for formatting, right? Okay. So you can split the points, etc. So now we're going to do one. So this is actually, so here's the thing. Because this is in English, and you're going to do what's called an individual readiness assurance test. You're going to take this test twice. First individually, we'll give you about 5 minutes, maybe about 10 minutes to review this on your own. We'll have you answer all 8 questions. And then after about 10 minutes, I'll call time, and then you mark down, so on this what I want you to do, so on this, when you read the test individually, I want you to circle what you think is the single best answer, okay? And then when you come together as a group, you're going to decide how to split the points using this form, all right? So on this test, single best answer, And then when we come together as a group, the group discusses how to split the points, okay, or what to do for sport. Everyone making progress? Another 2-3 minutes. We're going to have you come together in your groups. All right, so what I want the groups to do is the people who are on this side, let's just have you two come to this side over here. People move the chairs in. Okay. There you go. Oh, you pull your chairs yourself? Good, good, good. Okay. And we'll have you two in the back come to the front over here. You're going on this chair. Come to the front, okay? And I'll have you guys face each other, all right? So I'm going to have you spend, oh, sorry, you want to say it? I'm going to have you spend now the next 10-15 minutes talking about the answers. Okay? So now your goal as a group is that one person needs to fill out this form. Okay? You need to figure out together which answer is correct for each one, and then how confident you are. So in the same way, we had split the, either you're going to give a single, all 5 points to one, to A, B, C, D, or E. Here you're going to do the same thing, or you can split the points in any way that you want. One person is going to be the group tally person, okay? And you have 15 minutes to make your decisions. I want to hear some talking starting.
This for 0. Strong body. Right. There is this key.
Yeah, and B is also weakest.
together
Actually,
without the instructor.
Without the instructor.
Ah.
So this format.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm gonna change from A to C.
今 C ですね。
おーじゃあ、まあ、勇気を持って5点に行きますか。さっきの失敗を。
想像だけですけど。
で C は、ここはじゃあ5点に行きましょうか。
D。
今でも B にしたんですか？
あ、今 B です。
あ、1点ぐらい。じゃあ、はい。
じゃあ
違う違う。ちょっと開けて。はい。
But if you are scoring, then that's.
私も D です。比較的なんか。どこで D にしますか？ D にします。全部 D で、あ、じゃあ D だけでいいかな。3、2ぐらいしましょうか。すごい気になります。
You say, yeah,
ちょっとずるし
if we are
7番
asked
の
to
4S のところで B のスイングプログラムっていうのが
under the scrutiny of testing, some might think less motivated, some might be still motivated. That's why it does not assure the unifying group in the team. That depends on the individual, depends on the individual mood within the function.
じゃあ4ぐらいつけましょうか。一応ですね。全然バラバラだ。
This is why I choose this because no other questions have
Right.
only two of the options. So I wonder why.
Which option did you choose in terms of
The topics is different.
まあそうですよね。
Set completely different stories.
Yes.
But I am happy
What we
to
have to do
change
is
my mind
simultaneously,
split.
not necessarily.
Alright.
Because this one I am
There
not
are
so
to know
certain.
how the
I'm not certain. Sure.
And just remember, one person from each group needs to be marking down the answer of the group.
No, not C.
And one person in the group is recording the group's decision. Okay.
まあ一個違うのもある。
Getting good scores are always meaningful. That's why I rate them.
クリアな問題だった方がいいんですよね。
But yeah,
した方が。 今みんなでニュース話してるので、はい。
足して5点になります。はい。難しいですね。
今7番はでも D が2人ですから、
なるほど。そういう読みで。
If we address the different problems, the conclusion could be solved. It's better to share the aspects of why I chose
Five more minutes.
今B と D を2点ずつになってるので、多分もう1点とかに重み付けをしてほしいなと思って。あ、じゃあ C。
なんかよくわかんなかったから違うかなって思って。
どれも当てはまる。どれも当てはまる。
D かな。何でしたっけ？
私も D。
あ、じゃあ D って言っちゃいましょうか。じゃあ最後 Q。
私 A にします。
私 C でしょうか。
責任を持つ。
責任を持つ。はい。ありがとうございます。
で、あ、結構ありますね。
Yeah.
チームワークとかを目指してないんじゃないかと。
そうなんですか。
知らない。エラーを変える。
また何ですか。
If you consume a lot of time for
でもなんかそっちズラーニングやるのにリーダーシップがなんかないって言うんじゃないです。なんかここ的な何かあ、でも C はあ、ノートか、ごめんなさい、そうだそうだ。
ローテートしなくてもいいです。
じゃあこれは絶対ありなので。そしたら D ですね。ここが良さそうですよね。
私、プロパリーフォームだのマネージの別にされなくても
なんとなくざっくり。
まあそうか。
分けときますか。
じゃあどれくらい分けますか。
そうですよ。
チームデベロップメントはやっぱり欲しいですよね。チームデベロップメントは欲しいですよね。
じゃあ A を先にして、B にして。
いいですか。6番はBと C ですね。
Two more minutes. 2 more minutes.
私は D なので、私もこれで。
あ、日本でできますよ、そういうの。やっぱりなんか根拠を持ってこれが賛成とか言ってた方がいい。
最大公約数みたいな。叩き合わないといけない。
7番が一番よくわからなかった。
それがなんかことリンクしてるんですよ。
どういうことを言ってる
このなんか
30 seconds. Okay, make sure that you have your final answers for all of the questions for your group. Oh no, just keep it. We're going to talk about it.
特に選択されるんです医学的に
Oh, you guys can stay there if you like. Just stay there. It's better for discussion. Okay, hands down. All right, everyone's ready, right? Okay, do you want to know the answers, the correct answers? So normally in a team-based learning activity, people would have read the seminal article ahead of time, or the articles, because it's called an individual readiness assessment test and a group readiness assessment test. So here are the correct answers. Okay, don't change your answer, okay? Okay, good. Okay, so B, C, D, D, B, C, A, D, A. Okay? All right, so group one. So what was your answer? How many points did you give for answer?
Zero.
Zero? Okay. What did you put down as your answer?
A.
A, okay. Put A in parentheses, all right. Group two. Huh?
何点でした合計？
Zero, okay. How about group three? No, So he scored 1 point, okay. So far, group three is in the lead. Oh, okay. All right, how about for answer number two? Correct answer was C. How many points did you get? 5 points, all right. So you've just taken the lead. 4. Oh, coming up from behind. This group? 0. Okay. Oh, you just lost your lead. It was so promising for there for a minute. How about C? Number 3. 5. Hey, you guys are really crushing it. Great.
3.
Huh?
3.
3 points. Okay.
5.
5 points.
5 points.
All right. Catching up. Okay. 4. Question 4. 2 points.
3.
3 points.
Which one?
Number 4. Question number 4.
Number 4, 5.
5 points. Wow. Oh,
Oh, sorry, number 3 we scored only 4.
4 points. Okay. 4 points, and then for question. Question number 4.
Oh, question number 4 is 4.
4 points.
Okay, number 3 is 5. Number 3 is 5. Number 4 is 4.
Okay.
Sorry. So confusing.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. We're doing good. How about number 5? Huh? 2 points. Okay.
4 points.
4 points. Wow. Okay.
1 more.
1 point. Okay. How about number 6?
2.
2 points.
2.
2.
2.
2. Oh, wow. Kind of an even spread. Number 7. Huh?
0.
0, okay.
0.
0.
So 3.
Huh? 0. Okay, 0, okay. So it seems like there's some questions about number 7. How about number 8?
No more answers.
No more answers, so 0, 0, 0? Okay. All right, even if you'd given 1 point per, you could have still come up with some things at the end. Okay, how about
And 0.
0? Okay,
And 3.
okay.
5じゃなかったっけ
5.
5?
5 3
1? 4, okay. Yeah, let's see where we stand so far. So before we total them all out, let's go over the questions one by one. Okay, so it seemed like question 1 had a lot of, so people were sort of off base on this one. So why don't you go through the answers of what, so one of the things that you do after you do the scoring is each of the groups has the option of appealing their grade. You can appeal your grade, saying, I scored 0, I think I should have gotten a couple points. You can argue with me in class, or you can ask points depending on how the facilitator sets it up. You can ask the rest of the groups to give you points. I mean, they're not coming from them, you just get extra points. If you can convince them that you're right, okay? So convince me that your answer is better than what I think is the correct answer.
Telling us that correct is not necessarily correct.
No, I'm saying that according to, so sometimes if you can make a good enough argument, out of mercy or because you were pretty close, we can give you some points. Okay. So what did people put down for number 1? What answers did people put down for number 1? So group 1 put down answer A. So tell me why you thought A was the most powerful way of removing barriers. To having the team come together and work well together. So leadership makes a difference. Is that what you're saying within a group?
Yeah, if one person in the science role.
Okay, like what kind of rules are you thinking about?
For example, one can search for the internet.
Okay.
And one can take notes.
Okay.
One can, for example, read the discussion.
Okay.
Or one can, have intensive, deliberately have different opinions.
Oh, okay. I see.
So it could, stimulate the discussion.
Okay.
Forward.
Okay. Do you think that helps? So that's one argument. How about what did your groups think? You were thinking about question 1.
I chose C because some groups have the bad mood.
Bad mood?
So,
okay.
I
Okay.
thought it would be better to change the group.
So it would be better for the person who has a good mood to leave and go somewhere else. But how about for the rest of the students as a comfortable class? Maybe not. Maybe that's a good argument. It's a good thought, right? Okay. How about this group? What did you put down instead?
We scored A as 3 points and B for 1 point.
Okay. Okay. So again, why did you think that assigning roles would bring the group together?
Basically the same as the group 1.
Okay.
I myself, the B is also effective, but
B
what
is
is the
effective.
most powerful method? You cannot rate.
Ah.
Which one is powerful?
Okay. Okay. So the premise of team-based learning, so given the time restrictions, normally if we had a longer session and we were spending an hour and a half or 2 hours doing team-based learning, we would go through each one of these ones individually, okay? And we would have the groups argue, and people would talk about it, and we would argue for points, and then I'd say, well, what do you think? Is that worthy of a couple extra points here? And then the groups can decide whether or not that works. So the idea of team-based learning is this, is if you establish a coherent outcomes measure, and the outcomes measure is transparent, and you have the idea of a significant problem, something that's important to you, just like we talked about relevant and meaningful earlier on, like learning the African language for the African village that you're working in, and then all the groups work on it at the same problem at the same time, and all report at the same time, the way you're doing right now. Okay? Grading becomes very transparent. You can see which groups are doing their work and which groups aren't. You can see which groups chronically are following behind, and it brings out the competition in us. This is usually a very friendly competition, but it's a good competition because there's someone who's going to get the highest grade in the class. And in team-based learning, the group score is your only score, okay? So because the group score is the only score, if someone is like not performing well, the rest of the group will motivate them to perform well. Because if this is low in one category or the other, people are going to feel a lot of peer pressure, okay? But it's a positive peer pressure, not a negative peer pressure. So the idea that you have to leave a group to go somewhere else, or that the group has to be properly formed and managed. In team-based learning, the outcome scoring system, because the scoring is transparent, people are doing the same work at the same time, and everyone's showing their results together, it drives learning. Okay? And this is a very interesting learning format. People, this came up maybe about 15, 20 years ago, and it's been very widely adopted all over the world. It's really used a lot in North America. It's turned itself off. Yeah?
I have one question.
Yes.
Can I say team-based learning is just one of the problem-based learning?
I'm sorry?
The team-based learning is one of the problem-based.
No, it's not. It's a different format. So problem-based learning is what we did first. It's you're presented with a problem of some type. In this case, we did figuring out if a painting is real or forged. But it could be any problem. It could be, create, or one of my friends who's a dean at one of the universities in the States is a nephrologist. And my favorite anecdote is that he teaches physiology all year long. And then his problem-based exam at the end is you have discovered new life on another planet. And the characteristics of this planet are this. The salinity is this. And you found a new creature that has a kidney that seems to work better than ours is, and it gives all the parameters for it. And so it's basically create a kidney for this creature to be able to metabolize and excrete all of the stuff that they need to metabolize and excrete. So it's asking someone to apply the principles that they have learned in the course to a significant problem, and he doesn't give any direction for it, and people have to come up with their solution at the end. Another very famous example at University of California, Berkeley, which has a very good engineering program. In the States, it has one of the top engineering programs, is in one of the electronics classes. The professor comes in at the beginning of the semester and says, I want you to build a robot with a circuit board that does this. That's it. And he goes away. And at the end of the semester, there's some lectures and other things in the middle. But at the end of the semester, everyone's graded on, did you build a circuit board that can control the robot to do whatever they wanted to do? And there's no direction given. People have to, they go out and they read on their own, they come together and they work in groups, they can collaborate if they want to, but everybody has to build their own in the end. Okay? That's classic problem-based learning. Okay? So team-based learning is driven by three things, and we'll kind of go through the steps. Okay. So did they feel different to you, the case-based learning, the team-based learning, and the problem-based learning? Yes. Okay. So Tuckman in the 1960s had come up with this idea that teams come together in certain ways. When people first get together, you don't know each other, and you start to form relationships. And then afterwards, you kind of have this tumultuous period where you're figuring out personalities. And you call that forming, and then storming is sort of the personalities, like one person is too quiet, other person's too dominant, one person's off base, another person's not doing the work. So all of that stuff kind of starts to level itself off, and you go into this place where you're norming, long time, a functional group will perform continuously because you draw on each other's strengths and weaknesses and you make each other better. Okay? This is why if you have a writing group or a research lab that's working really well together, the productivity skyrockets because people are helping each other and they're growing together. And that group, that research group, is going to do better than any one individual alone. And then the last portion, of course, that he didn't put in the initial one is he called it adjourning or mourning, which is kind of like where you're grieving the loss of the group that you ended. Okay. So teams are very powerful. And having a good team promotes engagement and participation and peer review. And this kind of, the norming, performing stuff happens also in problem-based learning when you have the group together for a while, or in case-based learning. Over time, as the group gels together, they really get to know each other and draw on each other's strengths. Now, you can have a group together too long, where there's not enough ideas being generated and not enough kind of stimulation, but a lot of the external challenge has to come from the faculty. Like, we're in charge of creating those challenges, okay? And the students are in charge of sort of meeting those challenges. And for team-based learning, these are the steps. The first one is preparation. And you give people stuff to do, not more than 1 or 2 hours after class time. So it depends on how complex it is. It might be 2 pages, it might be 50 pages, depending on what it is. Then during class, you spend a couple hours in class together. And you do the 2 phases, the individual readiness assessment test, which is did you read the material, and you give yourself time to think about it and apply it. And then you do the group readiness assessment test, which is the process that we just did. Okay? Then you begin to discuss it. And this is in the discussion that misconceptions get clarified and that viewpoints begin to change and people get to share their ideas amongst each other. So the class also starts to come together. Okay? And then you follow that with something like this, which is a mini lecture, where someone who is a content expert is going to share critical information about whatever it is. And then the last thing is really important, which is, sure, the class grade is heavily dependent on the group readiness assessment test, but also you have a major project that you do where you could decide to build a curriculum, or you could do a lot of other things. And again, everyone works on the same problem and everyone reports their results on the same day, okay? Same time. So everyone can see each other's work and you can compare the quality of the work. And because it's so transparent, the quality of everybody goes up, okay? Now, I'm gonna, okay, so there's lots of examples of it. Multi-step problem, creating a new curriculum, designing and doing an experiment, building a model, figuring out a dilemma, okay? All of these are examples of the type of things that you can do for the group project, okay? So these are the 4 S's. It's significant, same problem, specific choices, and simultaneous reporting. Okay? This is actually a lot of work for the faculty up front because you've got to come up with the concept, and you also have to create these quizzes. And these things are hard to do because any multiple choice test is difficult, but these have to be at a level of sophistication that they engender discussion, not recall. If it's just based on recall, then it's not a good test. It has to generate discussion. And during the course, you have to also prepare the mini lecture, etc. Okay. So I'm going to skip this because we talked. I think at some point in time we talked about multiple choice questions. Actually, briefly, there's different types of multiple choice questions, right? So things that are just very basic recall versus things that require evaluation and synthesis. And so anytime you can, you want to kind of go towards analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, as opposed to just, did you know and remember, and did you understand it? Okay. It's a higher order of utilization of knowledge. And there's a gentleman, Bloom, who was it the 60s or the 70s, came up with what the taxonomy just means, ways of naming. Okay. So just keep this in mind when you're writing your questions if you decide to do team-based learning. That's the hardest portion of the TPL exercise. Okay? And this is kind of an example. So if you do the team-based learning questions, right, people are discussing these things and debating them for a long time. And Paul gave me this example. He said that he was teaching a course at Harvard And he gave this kind of question to the students, and the question happened to be up on the board like several hours after the course was done. And he just saw, he was passing the hallway with a couple faculty, and 2 students were still up there like reading this and discussing it. So you have 2 finalists in the World Arm Wrestling Championship in Petaluma, California. They're very well matched. Their upper body mass, their sensitivity to pain, their motivation, and experience are identical. And Vito, who's a Las Vegas bookie, that's where all the betting happens in the States, slips you the result of their physical examination ahead of time and asks you to say who's going to be the winner of this arm wrestling competition, right? And so you have all this data. What's most likely to determine the eventual winner? Okay? Is it going to be their cardiac output, their mitochondrial content, glycogen content, oxygen carrying capacity, CPK levels, right? So he saw these students who, and literally hours after the course was done, they were still there, they were debating and arguing. So good questions are going to draw you in, they're going to have a great stem, it's going to be fun. It does not have to be super serious all the time, okay? This is still getting at muscle physiology, but it's not asking a standard physiology question. It's kind of putting it in a context that's more engaging. So,
You're not going to tell us the answer?
I am not going to tell you the answer. I'm not motivated. I can put this up at the end of the class and you guys can figure it out. So there's 2 things that you can do. So what we did using this kind of format is a cheap dance version of the group readiness assessment test. The more expensive version is one where you actually have a card like this, as a scratch card, and people scratch off their first answer. And and then if they didn't get it, they can scratch off the second answer, then the third answer. And you can always tell, like, which group, if the group only has one thing scratched off, then you know that they've gotten the answer correctly. And so you can get the first answer is like 5 points, the second answer is 3 points, and the third answer is 2 points or 1 point. So you can kind of do it in a way that sort of rewards people appropriately. And when you buy these cards from the company, they'll give you, there's about like 20 or 30 different versions of these. They have a 10-question version, a 20, 30-question version, and they'll put the stars for each one in different places. So if when you buy a set, you might buy a set of, say, 10 items, and then they might give you like 40 cards or something if you've got 40 groups. And then they put the star in a slightly different position, so people can't like just run their nail over it and figure out which one is where the star is. Okay? But this is a much cheaper version, and you can just change it. Okay. We talked about this. And so the final scores come from both the group test and as well as the group project. And here's what we know about this. So unlike the other 2 methods, which promote, the ones that we looked at, which promote insight, and they promote teamwork, which this one does too, and self-directed learning, et cetera, et cetera. This one actually, because this is knowledge-based, okay, and this focuses a lot more heavily on content, this actually has been shown to increase board scores, and this has been shown in psychiatry, where every year from the time of implementation within like 2-3 years, test scores went up by about 10 to 30%, okay, depending on the year. And one of the things is that people always think when you do teamwork, if you have a good if a team discusses questions properly, everybody's scores go up, okay? And in fact, on average, every group will have a 30 to 40% increase in overall scores compared to individual scores. And this is true both for the bottom person, their scores increase the most, but the top person's scores increase as well. So the highest person's score here, which was 271 in this class out of 10, say for instance, their team score had a very high gain. So, or there were 10 teams, highest score was 271 in group 3, and that the score went up from 271 to 322 overall for team 3. Okay. So, yes?
Do you use IRAD, GRAD result for the final grade?
Oh, if you're doing team-based learning, the GRAT is part of, the IRAT doesn't count, only the GRAT counts. So you can do whatever you want to for the individual one, but only the team score counts. Because it's all about teamwork, you don't care about the individual. You expect the team to self-manage. Okay? So the key here is this, is that so one of the advantages of team-based learning is that you can actually have one faculty, so in one faculty, I can manage like 15, 20 groups, right? Because everyone's debating, it just depends on how much time you have. So usually it's not possible to do more than, say, 6 or 7 groups at a time. But if you wanted to, you could. So you could have, if there's a 10-person group or 8-person group, you can manage a lot of students with one faculty. And the other ones, you need to have individual one-on-one faculty work with each group. So the other two methods are much more faculty intensive. Okay? So in terms of scheduling and time, problem-based learning and case-based learning take a lot more time. In terms of initial work, team-based learning and case-based learning probably take the most work. Okay? But they all have different advantages and disadvantages. And when you're thinking about this, what I'd like you to do is sort of think about what some of these factors, like who's in charge of the initial topic and how much is the student known? Is it known or unknown? How much preparation do people have to do ahead of time? Who has control? What kind of data seeking maneuvers do you want people to have? And this is from a paper we published a couple years ago on this topic. And you can really select, based on what your goals are, the type of method that's going to work the best. And these are just 3 of many other methods, right? We've got clinical reasoning methods, we have a simulation technology that promotes teamwork or that provides individual skill development. So you have so many different types of things that you can do. And these were just made up and created and then validated by faculty like us, who had a good idea, who thought that one of the things that was missing was this, or was that, or was the other thing, right? So problem-based learning was developed at McMaster's because they thought they wanted to motivate the students to be independent and not be spoon-fed, right? They wanted to create a climate of learning and autonomous groups. Case-based learning happened because people thought that the problem-based learning system was too inefficient and students were getting frustrated doing a bunch of busy work and faculty expertise wasn't being used. And they wanted to have deeper discussions about topics by having people come in prepared so that the group time would be more valuable. And then finally, team-based learning came up because they wanted to have much more transparency and they wanted to have better outcomes evaluations. Okay, so you could actually say, here's the right answer, and then start discussion from there and still have people prepared. So these are very different techniques, and again, you guys can we all can come up with our own techniques and use them. If you develop a good technique, please share it with everybody so we can start using it too. Okay? And then we can do a talk on you. So here are some, does that make sense to you? Any questions about this so far? We're basically, this is my last slide. Any questions?
I don't quite understand team-based learning.
Okay.
Is the point on every member of the team has discussions, or is the competition between the teams?
It's both. It's absolutely both, right? So everybody comes prepared, having read the same material, and then you come together and you discuss the topic, and while you're in group together with a group assessment test, right? Usually it's not 15 minutes, it might be 30 minutes or 45 minutes. The group discusses what they know and what they don't know. You clarify misconceptions within the group. The faculty goes around to make sure that everyone's kind of getting is on task. And then you still have, with that time, it's a closed book thing. You have to kind of come in prepared. So people help each other in the group. And then the competition outside of it is part of the stimulus for making sure that your group is doing well. But the focus is the learning within the group. The competition between the other groups is for transparency and motivation. But through the discussion with the other groups, everybody learns.
So there is no team-based learning with only one team. They have to be many.
Well, I could take this team and split it in two. Minimally, you need about 5 to 6 people per team. So if you have 10 people, you can do it. Teams can still learn together, but that's much more of a project group. Because you don't have part of the value is the kind of it's that simultaneous problem and report. You don't have that peer pressure if only one group is reporting. The peer pressure is really important. We all respond to transparency. Is that helpful? Okay. Yeah.
So, in terms of the PBO or CBO, discussion is different all the time.
It's very different.
So that's why we sometimes use the same scenario for the another next year student. But in terms of PBL, you have to use the result of GRAT for the grading.
Yeah.
So you cannot use the same GRAT for the next year.
Oh, sure you can. You can just, I mean, you could if you, I think most people end up trusting their students. Like after a while, the students know that it doesn't help anybody to pass all the answers along. So you're right, because what you can do is you can change the order of it, right? So let's just say in year 1, the answer is C. Use the same questions, make the answer A next time. As long as they learn the content, how do you care, like what do you care which way they learned it? Because they're going to get the questions anyway, right? It's going to be on the same content. You're testing important principles. So if they can get the answer, that's terrific. But you don't want them to get it because they're going to have to convince everybody else and they can't say I cheated, right? So if you're in a group and someone's cheating, because the percentage of people who cheat is very low. Most people in medicine are pretty honorable and they have very high self-integrity. At least in our schools, we think that the percentage is very low. And you have to justify, if someone's going to ask you, why do you think that's the case? You can say you read it, but people are going to, once you get the team working, that everyone's going to go deeper. So there's always a question in anything you do of cheating. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. I think there's some easy things to do to get around it, but in the end, people can cheat if they really wanted to. I think that if you set up the right learning climate and you have a system of trust and really emphasize the honor code, people respond, at least in our systems, we think pretty well to that.
But wait a minute, you seem to be saying that knowing the answer is cheating.
No, knowing the content is not cheating, but passing the answer along deliberately to someone else and having someone actively get that information is cheating. You leave the test in the class, you don't take it with you. So people have to recall all that information, but hopefully they've learned the topic by then. And I think once people sort of, because that's part of the grade, the rest of the grade is a group project. No, but knowing the content is not cheating. Knowing the content is learning.
No, what the content is not the same thing as what the answer is. But when you ask questions like this, if people have read up on the subject and actually know what you're talking about, then they might already know the answers. So whether one person in a group or whether all the people in the group know the answer in advance, obviously that's a situation where there would be no cheating because everybody already knows.
Yeah, so
but you're saying that sharing the information with somebody else who didn't already know would be cheating.
Well, I think saying this is on the test is cheating. I think that saying what I learned is not cheating. So I think that sharing what you learned and saying, I took a 10-item test and here are the 10 items and here's the correct answers, it's cheating. But if you say, I learned a lot of things in this class and the major points I learned are, that's creating a positive learning environment.
Well, you're not aware that most of the tests that are used in entrance exams and so on, they're the same tests that have been used in the past, and one of the techniques, if you want to call it that, of students who want to get in is to learn what questions were asked 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and learn the answers to those in advance. That's the system here. And that probably has repercussions on how things are taught once you're inside the institution as well.
So for things that are high stakes, so high stakes exams, I think, so that's a completely different conversation, right? So there are multiple things to do for high stakes examinations to increase examination security. from placement of students to creation of multiple versions of a test. And for any content area that you have, to sample each content area about 4 or 5 times so that you can rotate the questions with similar level of difficulty, and of understanding the test characteristics once you have appropriate volume of students. So securing examination, so important examinations, I think is different than having, the standard I would use for a course that I was teaching might be lower than that, because the threshold decision is not so great. And over time, these things are going to even out. If you're going to invest a lot of resources in one place, you've got to figure out where to invest it. And I don't know that I would create 15 versions of this test. I think that would be a huge waste of time. So these are some of the important principles for active learning, right? So this is some of the summary points, is that when we're creating curriculum, whatever it is, just think about what you're trying to accomplish and what toolkits you have, tools you have at your disposal. So focus on learning, not on teaching per se. If you notice, for a lot of these sessions, I wasn't doing that much within the class, but hopefully you all were learning something, right? Active learning and active engagement is going to enhance your memory. And treat your learners with great respect and make them equal partners in learning. So a lot of the stuff with teamwork and with case-based learning or problem-based learning, all these small group learning methods, make the learners equal partners. Anytime you can provide feedback in real time, it prepares people for accountability. And that's the entire principle of team-based learning and also the stuff with case-based learning, right? And finally, whatever you're using for your assessment methodology is going to change what your learners focus on. Okay? If you're focusing on multiple choice data points, that's what they'll focus on. If the focus is going to be on in-depth decision and discussion of points, and you're grading them on that, that's what they will focus on. So whatever you decide to grade them on is what they will learn the best. Okay, they'll learn other things too. But so even if you're evaluating them on teamwork and dominance or non-dominance or whatever it is that you're assessing, make sure it's clear and transparent, because then they'll do it. Okay? Any thoughts or questions we can discuss? But I just wanted to sort of say thank you. Yes, yes.
How to evaluate individual student in a team-based?
You don't evaluate the individual at all. It's only the group grade that counts. So the individuals have only a group grade. And
we want to evaluate each student. How much coordinate or collaborate?
You know, because the team score will go up.
Contribute to the team.
You'll know if the team, if they're contributing. So here's the thing. So there are ways of giving students for putting in more effort and more points. Okay? There's 2 or 3 ways. But the only people who know who's been contributing are people within the team. So one of the things that you can do is you can ask everybody you've got 100 points to assign to your team. Assign those points to everybody in the group. Okay? And so one of the ways that you can get people to contribute is say that you will have 100 points, and you can give 100 points to yourself. You can give, there's 5 people on the team, 20 points to each person. Or you can say this person deserves 30, this person deserves 10, but then you all agree upon it together. And so you can have a discussion of who did more, and the team can decide. It doesn't have to be the faculty, because the faculty doesn't know who did the work. Only the people in the team do. And Paul has used that very successfully to be able to get everybody to participate. And what he found is that the highest functioning teams assign equal points to everybody, and that the teams that are not functioning well will have a grade spread in the scores.
There are several different parts of people, and who are fit with this system, but who does not fit with this system.
Oh, yeah?
Very hesitant to join the group discussion. How do you adapt this situation and the certain needed to this teaching system?
Can you give me an example of what you mean, like someone who's very quiet?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So a part of that is you created, so there's two things, right? So one has to do with environment, creating a climate of safety. The second has to do with expectations. And the third is if there's a faculty moderator, let's say for case-based learning, the faculty can make sure that they can call on those people, say, it seems like you've been a little bit quiet today, what do you think? So if you have a moderated discussion, like for problem-based learning, and for case-based learning, so for problem-based learning, someone in the group is a moderator, right? So the moderator is making sure, is pulling out the opinions. If someone is talking a lot, they'll say, it's wonderful that you brought that up. It seems like we haven't heard from this person. Why don't you sort of share what you think, or why don't you respond to what someone else said? So the moderator is in charge of that. And in team-based learning, and so the moderator is a student for case-based learning. The moderator is a faculty member and students for case-based learning. And for team-based learning, the group over time will self-regulate. Because the IRAD and the GRAD, oftentimes what you'll find is the person who's the most quiet, because you're getting your individual scores first, you're going to find out that the person who's the quietest probably has done a lot of work, and they're going to have higher scores than everybody else. And the person who's talking a lot often may not know the material as well. So it completely evens out. I've seen this happen over and over again. Other questions or thoughts? Was this useful to you? Did people learn anything new or have a new experience? Did you like it? Yeah? Okay, good. So I just want to really say thank you for inviting me to Koda. And I'd like to talk with you. And I've learned so much from you. And a special thanks to our wonderful staff for making all of this happen today and always. So thank you all, and to all of you.